Representative Adelson, welcome to your own committee. Would you like to move House File 3744 before the committee today?
Yes, Madam Chair, I would, and I would also like to move the DE8. It will get the bill in the shape I would like to speak to it in its overall capacity.
Thank you. Representative Adelson moves the DE8 before the committee, so the bill's in the shape she'd like to discuss it. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. The DE8 is adopted. Representative Adelson, go ahead and present your bill.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members. This House File 3744, as amended, is what we are calling, or what I'm calling this year, is READ Act 2.0. Last year, we had made an investment of $92 million in the READ Act, supporting an overall comprehensive approach to how our state does literacy. And this was going to address a systemic problem that we were seeing in our schools, where only about 50% of kids are reading at grade level. So what we invested in last year were adopting screeners, which I am happy to report those are out, professional development, which has been released through CARE and MDE, curriculum reviews, which are ongoing right now and will end, and I can speak to them a little bit more in just a few moments. We expanded the local literacy plan, which the first report will be this summer from districts to report the first rounds of what we are seeing in our schools. And so we have the pre, and then every year this committee will be getting a report. And that local literacy plan really will give us this larger picture of what's happening with literacy in our districts. Right now we use the MCAs oftentimes in districts to look at literacy, and it's a bad indicator of whether or not a student can read. Okay, so before you, the bill before you creates the ability to have certified trainers and facilitators in a district. Districts like Mankato, districts like Anoka-Hennepin have trained facilitators already in their schools, and this allows them to train the teachers that they have in their own staff, in their own district. It adds a third screener in the middle of the year so that we can look at the beginning, middle, and end of the year. That is best practice. So say on Fastbridge or Dibble, for all the students that are here, you guys know what I'm talking about, Fastbridge, Dibble, yeah? Okay, so it creates a report by Pelsby, who I believe is here today. So right now, Pelsby in higher education is reviewing all of the college reading programs, and it will require a report to this committee in 2025, 2026 on that. That report should be done by 2027. Just so that Pelsby can let you know how that is going. It currently allocates to districts funds that will be used for teacher stipends. And I just want to inform the committee, this is the largest, I have got a lot of feedback on READ Act to what's coming up. And I will say this is the largest issue every single one of your districts is facing. We need teacher stipends. People want to do this work, but teachers rightfully want to be paid when they are doing this training. I think that is something that our committee can agree to, and I hope that we can invest in it this year. It clarifies who will report the local literacy plan. It allows a district with their approved school board for 2024, 2025 to reduce the day of school, if approved in their school board and with their teachers in grades 1 through 5 by 1 day. It creates a special revenue fund that for unused READ Act funds starting June 30th of 2028. It extends the contract for 2 more years with CARE to 2027 of August. It creates a partnership with CARE and MDE to train volunteers and paraprofessionals that do Tier 2 interventions. This is important because a lot of districts throughout the state of Minnesota partner with nonprofit organizations, and we want to ensure that those nonprofit organizations that are going in to do Tier 2 interventions have the same training as our schools are receiving. Let's see here. It's a big bill, guys. The Department of, it also has a final curriculum review, which will happen in November of 2025. That will be the final curriculum review, as well as adding, right now we do not have any intervention, approved interventions. There is a lot of science and review on interventions, so that will be helpful. It also allows a local literacy incentive aid to be used for literacy specialists. It creates a partnership with Pelsby and MDE. Oh, actually, you know what? We deleted that. And then It also creates a working group to ensure that steps are being made to ensure that the READ Act investment accommodations are looking for best practices for deaf, deafblind, and hard of hearing, and requires a report by January 2025. And last, we added that MDE and Carey will work with publishers, whether this is through a special contract, on culturally responsive materials. Right now in the state of Minnesota, all throughout the state, whether it is Lucy Calkins materials that are being used in our schools or other materials, they are not culturally sensitive. They're just not. We shouldn't be surprised, and I'm not surprised. I'm actually happy that we found this so that we can work to correct the problem. We should have materials that are reflective of our state's diversity, that are sensitive. And with that, Madam Chair, I will go to my testifiers.
Thank you, Representative Edelson. With that, we'll call the first testifier, Bobby Burnham. Make your way down. Please state your name for the record and proceed. And Dr. Gibbons, you can also come up right afterwards on deck.
Morning, Madam Chair, committee members. Bobby Burnham, Assistant Commissioner for the Office of Teaching and Learning. MDE would like to thank the bill authors for their continued work and commitment to ensuring children, families, and educators are supported as we implement the READ Act. Representative Edelson and Senator McQuay continually seek input from our stakeholders in order to make revisions that will support school leaders and educators to effectively make these transformational changes to policies and practices in order to ensure our children read on grade level beginning in kindergarten. We look forward to our continued work together to ensure the final bill represents the needed adjustments to enhance implementation at all levels. Thank you.
Thank you, Assistant Commissioner. Next up, Director of Carey. Go ahead and state your name for the record.
Morning, Madam Chair, members of the committee. My name is Dr. Kim Gibbons, and I'm the director of the Center for Applied Research and Educational Improvement at the University of Minnesota. We are currently part of the MDE Carey partnership team working on implementation of the READ Act, and we've also partnered the last 5 years on implementing the Minnesota MTSS framework. I want to start by thanking you for your large investment in literacy. Statewide literacy reform is not something that happens in 1 or 2 legislative sessions. I know through my own experience guiding school districts in Minnesota and throughout the country that it often takes 5 to 10 years, if not more, to impact change at a large scale. In fact, Mississippi first passed their law in 2013, and this effort has been sustained ever since. So it's hard work, and we need to fight complacency and disrupt the status quo. I'm extremely supportive of READ Act 2.0 that extends funding for an additional 2 years. I think the investment is needed to produce the change that we want to see. I think you've already heard about some of the partnership activities that we've done, including the assessments, the professional learning programs, and I know I testified previously about the list of 5 curriculum that are currently on the state list. I want to just go back to that and really reiterate and note that there's currently no such thing as a perfect curriculum. In all of the structured literacy domains, no curriculum was 100% aligned with what we wanted to see. The curricula that ended up on the state-approved list had at least 75% of what we wanted to see and minimal to no red flags or things that we don't want to see. I also want to point out that the rubric that we used to review curriculum also had indicators that supported cultural and linguistic responsiveness. Those were woven throughout the domains, and there was a tab in the rubric where the reviewers filled out a table that was dedicated to providing information about diverse representation in resources across grades, by characters, authors, illustrators, to ensure that materials were reflective of those domains. In the area of cultural responsiveness, all curriculum reviewed had shortcomings, some more than others. The short list of identified curriculum included curricula that had the highest alignment with structured literacy, supports for English language learners, and were not identified as culturally destructive or insufficient. In fact, one of the curricula that's on the list, Open Up Resources, is an anti-racist curriculum that's published by a nonprofit organization. I just also want to mention that 3 other curricula that are used in Minnesota, Into Reading, Savvis, My View, and Wonders, were found by outside reviewers to be culturally destructive or culturally insufficient. All 3 of those curriculum were dominated by one-sided storytelling that provided a single historical narrative and used language that dehumanized Black, Indigenous, and characters of color while encouraging empathy and connection with white characters. I think that this review really offers some insight into how literacy curricula currently address the READ Act mandates and serve as a starting point for districts to enhance and tailor their curriculum to better meet the needs of diverse students. So for the curriculum that are currently on the approved list, we are committed to further work. We are going to be working to collaborate with all of the publishers on the list. In fact, we have a meeting with 2 of them next week to identify and address areas not aligned with anti-racism principles, ensuring cultural competencies and inclusivity for all learners. We also want to collaborate with community members, teachers, and local experts to contribute to identifying areas of concern to improve the review process. And we also are going to be releasing guidance documents soon, and coaching will be available to assist districts in implementing responsive practices. Finally, we are also going to continue our work by consulting with Goldie Muhammad, who is an expert in cultural responsiveness, to identify additional resources. So now we're in the reconsideration process for curriculum that are not on the list. That should be completed by April 29th. We're going to be pivoting really shortly to the instructional coaching framework, how we're going to support the regional literacy networks, how we're going to support districts that are using curriculum that are on the list and also not on the list, and ensuring that all teachers receive professional learning on evidence-based practices.
Thank you so much, Director. Next up, we have, and you'll be able to stick around if there's any questions. Okay, great. Next up, we have Dr. Elena Bailey. Oh, sorry. We have, Christine Werkamp. I should really check these off as I go down, huh?
Good morning, ma'am.
Superintendent, please,
Can you-
as remotely, so Superintendent, please state your name for the record and proceed.
Good morning, Madam Chair and committee members. My name is Dr. Christine Werkamp Herman, the Superintendent for Royalton Public Schools. I'm here to testify on behalf of Minnesota Association of School Administrators, Superintendents, and School Board members. I appreciate you allowing me this time to speak with you virtually today. I first want to say thank you for focusing on literacy with the passing of the READ Act. The investment in a statewide literacy system through the enactment of the READ Act is very positive for the children across the state of Minnesota, including small rural schools like Royalton. Royalton is a small rural district in central Minnesota. We have 1,000 students preschool through grade 12, and we are one of around the 90 or so districts across Minnesota that do not have operating referendums, which limits our discretionary funding. Fully funding the READ Act is imperative for districts like Royalton to be able to implement a literacy system with fidelity. As you consider additional funding for the READ Act, I would ask you to please consider flexibility in the use of the increased funding. Having worked in urban, suburban, and rural districts, I can tell you that none are the same, and the needs in one district do not necessarily match the needs of another. A one-size-fits-all approach will not allow districts with different needs to effectively implement the READ Act. For example, some districts may have elementary teachers already trained in the science of teaching reading, whereas a district like Royalton will embark on this work for the first time this fall. Royalton is actually going to be incorporating early release days for the first time throughout the year to allow teachers time to complete the science of teaching reading training. According to a meeting I attended with MDE and Carey, an effective literacy system includes the following must-haves: professional learning, curriculum aligned to the science of teaching reading, valid and reliable assessments to measure student progress, collaboration through PLCs, and instructional coaching to help the transfer of learning to practice. Royalton receives $43,270 in literacy incentive aid. This amount of money will not cover staff positions such as a literacy lead or literacy coaches, along with any stipends for staff doing the training, curriculum interventions, and such. However, added funding to the READ Act and allowing districts flexibility in its uses would allow Royalton, a small rural district, to implement an effective literacy system. So again, I just want to thank you for your time and listening to my concerns, and thank you so much for supporting the education of our children.
Thank you, Dr. Werkamp. Thank you, Superintendent Werkamp, for your testimony and for being with us here today. Next up, we have Dr. Elena Bailey from Pellsby. Please settle in and state your name for the record. And then on deck is Amy Wallstein and Justin Killian.
Chair Youakim, members of the committee, my name is Dr. Elena Bailey. I am the Executive Director of Pellsby. Thank you for the opportunity to be here and testify in support of the READ Act 2.0. And we would like to start by saying thank you to Representative Edelson and to Senator Mayquade for their hard work on this. It is incredibly important, and we appreciate the countless hours spent talking with community partners and working on this. Pellsby is responsible for establishing the state standards required to be a licensed teacher in Minnesota and for overseeing the state's teacher licensure programs. One of Pellsby's legislative priorities this session is to support policy measures that will increase student achievement in reading, including changes and support to professional development for teachers and funding for teachers in schools to implement needed policy changes. All of Minnesota students deserve well-trained teachers who have the knowledge and skills needed to support all readers. The READ Act 2.0 expands its commitment to Minnesota students by ensuring struggling readers in grades 4 through 12, or who are English learners who are enrolled in state-approved alternative programs, have teachers that have been trained in the science of reading. Additionally, this bill ensures Minnesota's future educators are prepared to teach Minnesota students by requiring an audit of teacher preparation programs in elementary education, early childhood education, and special education. This audit verifies that the teacher preparation programs in the aforementioned areas are including robust instruction on the science of reading, therefore ensuring each future teacher is prepared to implement evidence-based reading instruction to support Minnesota students. So in closing, we applaud this bill and the efforts being put forth, and we'd like to reiterate the board's full support for READ Act 2.0. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Bailey. And I know you had a handout that we just got, so we'll make sure we follow up with the committee members afterwards. Go ahead, state your name for the record and proceed.
Good morning, Madam Chair and members. My name is Amy Wallstein. I'm the Senior Policy Director at the Minnesota Business Partnership. We are an association of over 100 CEOs from Minnesota's largest companies, united by the mission of enhancing Minnesota's business competitiveness and ensuring all Minnesotans are prepared for futures in the global economy. We are also united by a deep commitment to improving literacy outcomes. Minnesota has a literacy crisis, and we have an imperative to solve it. Less than half of Minnesota students are reading at grade level. BIPOC children and children from low-income families consistently score 25 to 30 points lower than white peers. The way that we've been teaching reading is leaving too many Minnesotans behind. The good news is that thanks to last year's READ Act and the work of Representative Edelson and Senator Mayquade, we will transform the way that reading is taught. Some schools are already doing it. Monroe Elementary School in Brooklyn Park, part of the Anoka-Hennepin District, has started early with the science of reading and has been using the Bridge to Read instructional program. They've seen over 20-point gains already. We need to keep going with this work, and we need the funding to make sure that we have continued investment in the READ Act resources, especially curriculum and stipends for teachers. We'd also encourage you to keep working on the through line from higher education so that we are training teacher candidates in the science of reading in their teacher prep programs and bolstering it with professional development and onboarding as they reach their classrooms in the district. So again, thank you, Representative Edelson, and please keep supporting the READ Act and with investments. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Wallstein. Next up, we have Dr. Justin Killian. Please state your name for the record and the organization you're with.
Hi, thank you, Chair Joachim. My name is Dr. Justin Killian. I am here on behalf of the more than 86,000 educators that are members of Education Minnesota to speak in favor of Representative Edelson's bill, House File 3744, the READ Act. I'm here to focus specifically on one aspect. Minnesota has too long been complacent in the face of startling statistics about the reading levels of our students. We have some of the worst opportunity gaps in the nation between students of color and white students when it comes to literacy. And my members stand very concerned about this, which is why they are thrilled the state has invested so many resources to reverse these trends and to start doing the work we need to turn things around. But I want to give you another statistic. I've been traveling all over the state talking to my members in all regions, and they have one simple request. And their simple request is that they need the time, the resources, or some kind of funding to get this training done. And I've been met with like a lot of naysayers that are like, oh, teachers have always needed to do this training. Teachers have always needed CEUs. How is this any different? And I've been really thinking about how to like really break through that noise. And so I'd like to give you all a different statistic. Do you know which profession of all the professions in the United States of America has the highest rate of urinary tract infections? It's educators. In fact, the Journal of Occupational Safety just found that 59% of teachers do not have time to go to the bathroom during the contract day. We frequently survey our members on what are their most common stressors. And always in the top 3 is, I don't have enough time to go to the bathroom. So if our teachers are struggling at the level that they don't have time to go to the restroom, I don't know when we're expecting them to do this intense, rigorous training with fidelity. So please, please, as you're thinking about how to allocate the resources, I know resources are scarce, I know districts need money for curriculum, but our teachers are breaking. And they need support to be able to do this right and so that we can do what's right for the students of Minnesota. So I thank Representative Edelson for all her work and all of her advocacy. She's brought together organizations that don't normally always play nice, and we're all here to speak in favor of this. And please, please, please remember the teachers as you're deciding where to put the resources that you have for this bill.
Thank you, Dr. Killian, and thank you for making it real and bringing that reality of the classroom into our committee room. With that, members will bring the questions to the table then, see if folks have any questions or comments. Representative Bennett.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Representative Ellison. We heard this in ed policy, and it's a good update. I appreciate it very much. Reading is such a huge, it's the most important skill for children to gain because it opens the window and the door to all the life opportunities that we have in this nation. So thank you. I do have, excuse me for that, kind of a question or comment. Well, one quick question is what the funding for CARE, can you remind us what that will specifically be used for?
Representative Edelson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And Representative Bennett, thank you for your support of literacy. You've always been definitely a person that is behind the scenes, making sure we're doing that work. So the CARE contract right now, when we look at the end of what needs to be done, we're looking at curriculum reviews that will wrap up in November of 2025. And really, CARE needs to be able to shift and do the coaching. I mean, this work is going to go until 2027. And so our districts, whether it was Royalton or districts all throughout the state, are going to need help and support as we do this work. And so a lot of it will be coaching. Some of it will be potentially the partnership of looking at just how to train facilitators potentially. I mean, just really the unrolling of this. They have a great expertise at CARE that would be able to help and partner with MDE. And, MDE, I'm sure, could come down and talk to maybe the need for the continued partnership with CARE. I know Director Burnham is here, so.
Representative Bennett, follow-up?
Follow-up, yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for that. I think CARE does a great job, and I appreciate what they've done with this. The other thing I just wanted to comment on or bring up, and just maybe as an encouragement, is I appreciate that you have addressed a little bit here the teacher prep programs, because that is huge. I mean, the teacher prep is really what fuels our instruction in our schools. That's the source, and we need to get at that. And we have asked our schools to take this on very aggressively and make these changes. And we should. It's an aggressive timeline, but that's a good thing because this is hugely important. I do think we need to also ask our teacher prep programs in Pellsby to take this on aggressively. And I know there's a study or review that will come back to the legislature, which is a good thing. But I believe we need to go beyond that. And just like we're asking schools to review their curriculum, does it have the science of reading in it? If not, make those changes. I believe we need to ask our teacher prep programs to make these same changes really immediately, instead of waiting to come back to the legislature. Let's listen to, the outcome of the study. Just say, do that study and make those changes. We already know what's effective in reading, and I believe we need an aggressive approach for teacher prep in Pellsby as well. So just a comment. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Bennett. Representative Edelson.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Representative Bennett. So we are going to be moving the timeline for teacher professional development to August of 2026. We've been hearing from all districts throughout the entire state. We have that aggressive date of August of 2025, and it's going to be really hard, and we want it done the right way. And so we not only have we kind of fixed the higher ed disconnect with the K through 12, we fixed it, and so it's going to take time and a process, just like all of this will. We can't ask our districts, K through 12 institutions, to fix this overnight. It's going to take years. Higher ed, it will also. Pellsby, I will say, is doing that reading audit right now. They have gone through many different schools. I know. We have Pellsby here, and so maybe they want to speak to how many they've gone through, but that work continues to make sure that it is aligning with structured literacy, and the final report, I believe, is done in 2027. So we're on the right track. I would caution us on moving too quickly, because when we move too quick, we make mistakes. This is a big shift, and I think that we just need to give each other grace as we go through this work together.
Thank you, Representative Bennett. Follow.
Thanks, Madam Chair. And thank you for that, Rep. Edelson. I agree. We need to do it right. I want to keep that in our sights just as strongly as we keep our schools. And just a final comment. I do believe this is important. I like your bill, and this is what we should be focusing on. The sad part is our schools are incredibly overwhelmed right now with all the mandates that they received last year, from ethnic studies to discipline to so many different areas, and which is outside of the realm of your bill, I know, but it kind of takes away from letting them focus on this. And I wish we could have just said, all right, this is our focus from last year. We can't change that now. Well, we could, but we need to help schools not be so overwhelmed so they can focus on this really important legislation. So that's just a final comment. Thanks.
Thank you. Next up, we have Representative Ream.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Representative Edelson, for bringing this forward. I have talked to teachers, and I talked to the superintendent, the interim superintendent at Eastern Carver County Schools, and she wanted to stress multiple times how much she loved the READ Act, but she also wanted to stress that, they needed the resources and the funding to get it done right. And so she was asking for flexibility in how the schools do this, stating that, if we have the teachers do the training during the school year, that'll shorten the number of days students are with their, regular teachers, and would also require hiring of substitute teachers. And wondering if there's flexibility in the funding for them to do the training in the summertime. And just kind of curious how that would work and if there is that flexibility. And then just to reiterate, many people that I've talked to, they love the READ Act, so thank you so much for bringing it forward, and I'm hoping that we can successfully implement this. Thank you.
Representative Edelson.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Representative Ream. Yes, 100%. I hear what your district is saying, and they are not alone. That is what districts are saying across the state. They want flexibility on how they're going to do the training, and we want them to have the flexibility to do that. So the teacher stipends also would pay for substitute teachers, and districts get to make the decision on how and when they will do it. Core is significantly less. Carry-all is significantly less in the number of training hours that it takes versus letters. So I think I've heard from a lot of people they're going with core. How they're going to do that, that is your district's decision on how, and the READ Act, we've really tried to provide that training so it reduces the cost, but it doesn't get rid of the idea that the teacher should be paid for that time, or if you have to bring in the substitute teacher, which is why we need to invest in it this year. We need an investment. I know it was $92 million last year, but this is a big undertaking, and it will require us to invest. So thank you.
Thank you. Representative Zamora.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Representative Edelson, for bringing this bill. I just wanted to talk a little bit about, I think, the important work that you were doing around ensuring that our curriculum is culturally responsive, culturally sensitive. I think, the fact that when we did this audit, we didn't find a single curriculum that really match the standards that we're trying to set in terms of, culturally responsive curriculum is really alarming. And I think, the READ Act focuses a lot on how kids are learning to read. But I think what kids are learning to read with is also really important. And the fact that I heard the testifier talk about, the characters in the books of, the white characters portrayed in a positive light, the characters of color were portrayed almost always in a negative light. That's incredibly concerning, and when we talk about things like ethnic studies being this extra or additional thing and wanting to kind of get back to focus on core curriculum, the reason we passed the bill for ethnic studies is that there's so many gaps and holes in our core curriculum. And so I would love for a day where ethnic studies is woven into everything that we teach our kids, and there's no need for standalone curriculum for that. And I think the work that you're doing with the READ Act is helping us get closer. So thank you for that.
Thank you. Representative Edelson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I completely agree with you. They should be interwoven. We can walk and chew gum at the same time, teaching our kids how to read in a culturally responsive way with materials that reflect who they are. That is giving them confidence. That is saying that they're included. And so I thank you for your comments. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Thank you. With that, we have Lead Kusha.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And Representative Edelson, I echo Representative Bennett's thank you for your work on this. You've come a long way. I look back to a year ago and many of the tensions that you had to navigate. At one point, we couldn't even say science of reading in here. And we were fighting against higher ed institutions that were fighting against you on vernaculars, and you navigated those well. Good luck with this. What I would offer is I think you still have some uphill battle. We have a governor's office that came out with a very uninspiring budget, and we need to make sure that he understands the importance of the reading that you've done. And we hear from schools like the superintendent of Royalton talking about how important this is, and I've heard from administrators over and over and over. They get it, and they want to support it. And to that comment, I would say keep up your work, and I would hope that Education Minnesota understands the importance of backing you and not just creating false narratives about how schools are hiding money. Instead, let's get behind the READ Act, let's get behind you, and let's help our kids. So good luck with that.
Representative Edelson, with that, final comments.
Thank you. And thank you to the committee for all of their comments. I will just say that this is one of those pieces of legislation that everybody is behind because we want to do right by our schools, we want to do right by our teachers, and we want our kids to feel successful. I'll just remind the committee again, I've talked about it in the past, but I didn't learn to read until I was in 7th grade. And it took me years to talk about it. I had what we know is dyslexia. A lot of people, we don't know what that is. And the screeners that we give, they can take 5 minutes and they can change a child's life forever. And so having interventions here in the state of Minnesota so that we're not just tailoring to who can afford those private interventions, we're making sure all of our kids in public schools get the interventions they need. It will reduce barriers, it will increase opportunities, and I thank you for your support.
Thank you, Representative Edelson. With that, Representative Edelson renews her motion that House File 3744 as amended be laid over for possible inclusion in an education finance bill.